Hello, happy Tuesday. Tuesday, June 3rd. As of today, I've been married 7 months. So, happy 7-month anniversary to my honey. Um, I was gonna have him come on camera so you could say hello to him, but I realized he's been working in the yard all day and probably not really wanting to come on camera right now. But anyway, so today's a good day for a lot of reasons, one of which is I'm back with you. So, hi, Carolyn and Valerie. Great to see you guys. So, I today I have had guys ever have an odd day where just for whatever reason, nothing bad, just I'm off today. Like I'm just off. My brain is a little off today. And so I was talking to Diego just before we came on and thinking about, what's most helpful to share tonight. And of course, I'm always here to answer your questions that you have. So again, please feel free to put any questions you have in the comments, and I'm watching them. Hi, Allie and Megan. Good to see you guys. But couple things. So a couple things came to mind that we were talking about. One is, so I've been doing a lot of coaching, and FYI, I did notice a few little spots that seem to be open for next week, like a few spots here and there. So if any of you are interested in that, just double check and see if there are a few spots here and there that might be open, because it looks like there may be next week a couple of places open. So love to get together with you and meet with you about the coaching. I want to talk about a little bit of what we do in the coaching, or what we can do in the coaching. And really it's tailored towards you. The whole point is that the time slot that you've signed up for, whether it be 30 minutes or an hour, whatever the time slot, it is about you. What is going to serve you best? And hi, Carolyn. I don't know what's open in July. We've released all of the spots, and I don't have that schedule in front of me, but we will go into August, August, September. So we'll do that probably mid-July, open that up. So I'll keep you guys informed. But so the coaching time is really meant to be all about you. So I've had some who just want to talk through kind of where they are and what might be next steps for them, what sounds right. I've had some who are contemplating whether they should make a move. And so we talk through that and the pros and cons and what that might mean for them. I've had, of course, many of the actors that I've been coaching with, we're going through headshots and not even so much resumes, but we do go through resumes. But headshots, reels are a major part of it. Hi, Kathy. Um, just to fine tune the tools that you have. And so the nice thing about that is, oh, Diego said that there are some openings in July. So that's great. We go through really very, very specifically and very detailed, going through like the headshots, what's working, what isn't, what kinds of things, as I look at it, that are kind of looking like a void or an area you could move into. Sometimes it's about having too many headshots and kind of um, clouding the messaging that you have. And so just really looking at you specifically and going over those with regards to what your goals are and what it is. Also your team, your agents and managers, a lot of time, um, I'll pick out a headshot and say, why do you have this one? Or what's the purpose of this? And the answer will be, well, my agent or manager loves that one. Oftentimes it's a commercial agent who likes certain shots because, the commercial headshots can be different than the theatrical. They don't have to be, but they can be different. So just talking through the specifics of that, especially if you're at a point where you need to get new headshots, then we can talk through what my recommendations would be for that and how to make the most of that headshot session to make sure that at the end of it, when you're going to invest good money in new headshots, that you walk away from that session, from that experience with the tools that you need. You get the shots that you need. And so that's a big part of what we do. And then, of course, the reel. It's interesting. I've had a couple recently where, as I look at the reel, I'm thinking of one specifically. There were some clips that didn't make sense to me because, of course, I had no context for what they were from and what the piece was. And so they didn't quite work for me as I watched this person's reel. Now, they explained what the context was, and it made a little more sense, but still, watching it cold as someone who is just gonna click on a reel and watch it, I think sometimes it's insightful for you to, um, get a fresh perspective on the footage that you have and what may be working, what may be not. Sometimes I think, that footage or creating a reel can get clouded by either your experience on the film, meaning you loved working on the film, you loved that project or the people, but maybe the scene isn't as strong as it could be. Um, but because you are looking at it from the whole experience, of course, it's very positive for you. So just having fresh eyes on some things like that, sometimes it's just a matter of moving different pieces in a different order. And so we're able to go through that with your specific footage and watch them together, screen share and watch them together and talk through those things. Um, I got to catch up. Hi, Lane from Woodstock, Georgia. Woodstock is a wonderful town. Love that little place. The blonde, ATL Film and Stage. Aw. Ken, good evening. And North Nashville. Love it. And Jennifer, hi. Good to see you guys. And again, if you have any questions for me, please feel free to ask them. I just thought I would spend a little bit of time talking about the coaching process and what we do in case that might be helpful to you. And the other thing I've been doing a lot is actually working on either audition pieces. Several actors who had auditions they needed to turn in. And so we were able to work through those in advance of them taping those and turning those in. And then just working on monologues in general, just for the exercise of that. And so it's been a really nice wide range of sessions with different people who everybody's needs are a little unique and different to them. So anything that you feel like would be helpful or that my experience or my insight or my POV as a casting director may help you with, we we can spend that time doing that. And the working if you have a monologue you've prepared and you want to dive into it, then yeah, we work that live while we're doing the session. Just because it stretches you, and I love that when someone is just has a piece that they're working on just for it's not for an audition, but it's just to have in their repertoire and to stretch themselves as an actor. So it's really fun to get into that as well. So yeah, the coaching can be whatever is most helpful to you, really. It's your time when we're together there. Ken. I'm constantly being cast as the heel or the villain in most everything I'm cast in, but I often want to broaden my horizons acting wise, but I seem to be stereotyped constantly. Eh, I I can understand that. Oh, you follow up. Not that I'm complaining. I love what I do, but I would love to venture into other footprints. Um, I hear you. Being typecast can be a blessing and a curse, right? A blessing because you can get consistent work. You're really good at a certain kind of niche, and that can become your niche. And so I say, milk that for all it's worth. But I can understand how creatively that would get a little stale for you, or could get a little stale for you, and that you'd want to stretch yourself a bit. So, a couple of things. One, I would challenge you to stretch yourself on your own. So find a piece, a scene, something that does take you into the kind of role you want to stretch into, the kind of role that intrigues you and excites you, um, and do the work just on your own, or with someone or with colleagues. um, Tape it, perform it, really explore that part. If it's something that's worth posting, then post it. Post it on your own socials, post it on a Vimeo or a YouTube, um, just so there's pieces out there that are showing you in a different light. It may be helpful if a role comes up that is kind of in the vein of these roles you're experimenting with and exploring with, that you have something to say, hey, here's a piece that I self-taped and laid down on my own. Love you to take a look at it, or consider this. The other thing I would say is collaborate with some other filmmaker friends, some other colleagues, and write a piece for yourself to stretch yourself into, or get yourself into some of these characters and roles that really interest you, but that you're not necessarily being given the opportunity to do. So make the opportunity for yourself, make the opportunity happen. Um, and I'm guessing you probably have friends, colleagues. If you're not someone who enjoys writing or feels like that's a skill set you have, there's probably plenty of people in your circle of colleagues that do write, and it could be mutually beneficial. There are a lot of festivals that have um, short film competitions where you could enter something that's interesting like that. There's no downside to that, and if you can write it purposely so that it's not an expensive thing to create or make, um, write for the budget you have, which may be zero budget, but with iPhones and ring lights and different very cost effective sources, you could do something really beautiful, especially because at the end of the day, performance is the key. That a compelling performance will make a huge difference when everything else about the piece is very simple. So, yeah, I would say create the opportunities yourself for yourself. Um, and you'll notice people like a Jim Carrey, like a Philip Seymour Hoffman, like a Paul Giamatti. They spent a lot of years doing more um, kind of the same kinds of roles over and over. They were the supporting player. They were the guy next door. They weren't the number one dude for a lot of years. But when you are so good at what you do, regardless of what you're handed, um, over time, you can see some opportunities open up for someone to take a risk, to give you a chance to do something different. And obviously that was the case with Paul Giamatti with Sideways. Who would have thought that he was the romantic leading man? Now, granted, it was a romantic leading man that was, quirky and fit him, but I think it fit him because once he was in the role, they crafted it around his strengths and his unique qualities. So you can do that as well. So, um, yeah, there's a lot of wonderful character actors who just consistently project after project after project do great work, make really good relationships. So if you're consistently doing good work, maybe these are some of these niche roles, but you are developing relationships with these writers or producers, directors who look at you and see quality work, see a great work ethic, see someone who's really skilled and talented. um, they may be willing to take a chance on something different for you, or at least give you the opportunity to audition for it. So just keep doing what you're doing at the highest caliber possible, and keep building those relationships, being the person that everyone wants to work with, that people enjoy working with, that they love having on their sets. Um, and I think that opportunities will open up, and then make your own opportunities. So, Carter, let's see. I'm 15 now and can play younger, but getting a lot of 18 to play younger until I get his set. Okay. What can I do to be noticed and make a difference and get an opportunity to self tape? So, Carter, you are in a challenging position because this is just the reality of being 15. I'm going to say we as casting directors, producers, are going to hire 18 to play younger because it has a significant impact not only on the scheduling of a film, but on the budget. Has a big impact on the budget. So it costs more and takes longer to hire a 15-year-old to play a 15-year-old than it does an 18-year-old to play a 15-year-old. And that's just the reality of at 15, you likely still have school. Now, if you're homeschooled, that can be helpful in that you're in the homeschooling environment, you have more flexibility as to what the school hours are and which days are school days. But there are labor laws and federal laws that at certain ages just prohibit the number of hours that you can work, the number of hours that schooling is required. And so there's nothing you can do when you're actually 15 to change that. And so an 18 to play younger is going to be more advantageous because they can work full days. They don't need to hire a social worker, a licensed social worker on set, whereas they would with a 15-year-old. And so I don't want you to get frustrated at something which honestly you can't really change. So you're not getting the opportunities. You're not yeah, I'm about to double. The opportunities aren't opening up not because you aren't talented, but because of something that's completely out of your control, which is that you're not 18, you can't work as an adult. So there are some people 15, 16, it's a little more common we get into 16 and 17 who who eventually can work as an adult, and that makes a big difference. So until you're able to work as an adult, 18 to play younger is going to be the more desirable choice because it saves money across the board. It saves money and saves time across the board. So I can't really give you a formula to fix that because I don't think it's anything you're doing creatively or as an actor that is going to change that. Now, I will say anytime you're auditioning for anything, just be great, be interesting, be compelling, be the best person for the role, and then maybe they'll overlook some of those other, um, l let's say, disadvantages, which is the work hours and the social worker. But in this particular case, you have an 18-year-old and you have a 15-year-old. They're both fantastic. They're both great, but one is literally gonna save you thousands of dollars, and it just you can't do anything to change that. Um, but I don't want you to get discouraged either. It's just a season right now. It's a season of life where you're at an age that, it's you're just at that in between age on the cusp of being able to work as an adult. So you're in competition with 18 to play younger actors, and the logistics of it are there's advantage to hiring 18-year-olds. So try not to let it get you discouraged. Doing keep doing your very, very best work. It You don't know the seeds that you are planting as far as someone who is watching you, or sometimes how close you might be getting to a role. You don't know any of that. So just keep doing your best with the opportunities that you have, and understand that for this little window of time, there are some things that are out of your control. So do the best with all the things you can control, is what I would say. Hi, Jenny. Yes, I'm happy to be here. Um, okay, let's see. So I thought it would be helpful to go sorry, I'm being very distracted by someone who is not very nice. Um, I would like to let's see, Love Tracy. Makes sense why 90210 had older actors play. You'll see it most of the time. Uh, we just shot a week away, and the actors, all but all but two of the actors in the main cast were over 18. And it makes a huge difference in the bottom line financially and logistically. It just does. So, um, okay. So I want to talk a little bit with Diego. I want to bring him in the room and talk a little bit from his perspective about what makes a difference for him. I know some of you are interested um, in seeking representation, or you're looking for representation, and so I want to talk a little bit about that and what catches his eye, what makes a difference. So, my dear friend Diego, if you have a moment, come. There you are. It's the one and only Diego, you guys. I love it.
Hey,
I love it. Thanks for that. Thanks. I literally told him, like, yeah, let's have you come on. So he had no notice. But I have one of the things in the coaching I have been getting a lot of is, um, how do I find representation? How do I get an agent? How do I get a manager? And I'm sure um, you get approached a lot, right?
yeah,
For people who want you to represent them and to manage them. And so this isn't a like everyone now reach out to Diego and ask him to manage you, even though I mean you can and you will. But
yeah.
I want to talk more in general about kind of what Love Tracy says hi.
Hey,
Jenny Lamb says
Lucy.
hey. Um, Richard is here, and see Richard Zarangi. Ken Dodge was there at one time. Yep. Richard, see, you're a veteran in this, so you know what it's like. You just gotta do good work until someone will let you do something different. But okay, so you've been going to conferences, you see a lot of people, you see films. Um, I know that your philosophy as a manager is a little different because it's not just about the work, meaning it's not just about a transactional relationship with you.
No.
So, how does that affect who you choose to work with? What matters to you on that front?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good question because I think I think what's helpful for people, and even for myself, I was in a podcast interview this past on Monday. Um, no, yeah, it must have been last week, but and they asked me this question in terms of how I got started, and I think it's really helpful for people to be reminded of that,
Mm,
because I think it helps kind of give clarity on how I operate.
yeah.
And I think for me, I've been more and more as I get older, I become more aware of how God doesn't let anything be go to waste, and how
Mm,
He has this plan even before we do. Um, and when I was in this interview and they asked me about that, like how I got started and what I look for, um, my background is not industry. I didn't know
mm,
anyone in the industry whatsoever. Um, and my background has been discipleship and has been
mm,
relationships. So how I got started in like the industry was
mhm,
I fell in love with Jesus. And as a young kid, when I was being discipled, and I learned this new groundbreaking thing where my pastor told me, you don't need to abandon your gift. God wants to use your gift for you to use that and point it to back to him. And I'm like, oh wow, I can use media. And I fell
mhm,
in love with media, with music, and started doing it for God. And then got involved in youth. I was a youth minister, like a youth pastor, and then God called me to ministry for several years, and we planted a church, and I grew up in a church that was very limited in resources.
mm,
So when it came down to making presentations or graphics, I had to learn how to do it all. And at that
mhm,
time, I didn't know what God was doing there, but I
mm,
learned how to do some basic graphics. I
yep.
learned how to do edits on video for the church, for the Sunday gathering. Um, and then while I was pastoring a church, I was looking for somebody to speak for Father's Day. During that time in Miami, and Bev, you probably are, I'm sure you know about Miami. Miami does not support Christian films, like no one ever comes out. So
Right.
my wife and I, we would always go, regardless of the movie, we would always go to the movie theaters when it premiered to just go support it, not to
Yeah,
get anything from it, just to support.
right.
Um, and this one Christian actor lived in Miami, and I would see him at all these premieres, and it was Robert Amaya. And I remember I'm like, well, I've been seeing him. Let me reach out to him, see if he'd be interested in coming to speak at the church. So I booked him to come and speak. So we started planning meeting, preparing for that, and we did that. But that Sunday came around, he spoke, and then he still wanted to keep meeting, and
Mm,
we kept meeting every week. And the conversation from that Sunday gathering shifted to me just being inquisitive and like, hey, what are you doing with your career? What are you doing with
yeah.
social media? And just genuinely being curious. And we just started talking about that. And then after like a month and a half, Robert, we're sitting down in the office, and then Robert tells me, he's like, hey, Diego, I love your shepherd heart. I love how you approach this and how you care about me as a person. And then you're asking me about my career. He's like, would you consider coming on as my manager? And to that, I responded to him and I said, what the heck does that mean? I
I love that.
was like, bro, I am not a man. I don't know what that means. I said, I just go and support Christian films. I don't help make them or manage people within that, and he's like, and this is how you know it was God in that, because he's like, Diego, I'm going to show you what I know. And you start going to these workshops and conferences, which part side note, that's why I'm so I support conferences and workshops, because that's what I did. So he's like,
Mm.
"You'll get the hang of it, Diego. When you start going, knowing how you operate, you'll start learning." And then
Yeah.
that's how I got started. So I shared that to share that became my blueprint in how I operate as a manager. And it's
Mm.
relationship over representation. We
Yeah.
have to be like, we have we have to have some type of commonality in terms of relationally. And what I've learned now is that, like, what the Lord was teaching me is, whenever I'm thinking of seeking anyone out or wanting to partner within management, I look for alignment before the assignment. I look at,
Mm.
we align
Yeah.
as people. Number one,
Mhm.
as followers of Christ, and then can we just have a conversation, where we can just become friends. So I share all that to say I am not for everybody, because some
Right.
people may just want an industry guy, and
Right.
that's not me. For better or for worse, that's not me. So for me, my perspective is always going to be, whenever I'm looking for somebody or if the Lord brings somebody, what I'm looking for is, do we align? Can we
Mhm.
be friends? That's my number one.
Yeah. That's so interesting, and I relate to the whole idea of just taking the steps, not even really sure what God was gonna do with it, 'cause, that is kind of what happened with me, which is I jumped in and a filmmaker said, "Hey, why don't you help me with casting?" I didn't go in with the idea of I'm gonna be a casting director for 30 years,
Mm,
but you just sort of walk through the doors that are open and take the steps that are
yes.
before you, one step at a time, not knowing what that future is. So for you, that was like, "Okay, Robert, I'll go to a conference," you know?
My approach has always been, like, my curiosity is what has led me. Like, I
Mm,
trust God, and my curiosity leads me. Like,
yeah.
my my limitations, we sometimes view our limitations as ineffective, but
Mm,
our limitations force us to rely on God and not on our
mm,
own ability. So
yeah,
at that time when I'm like, God, I don't have money for graphics or money for videos for the church or money to hire a marketer. That limitation forced me and gave me an opportunity to learn how to do it. My
yeah,
limitations from experience as a manager, how it forced me to go and go to these conferences. And the
right.
difference between me and other people is simply, I am willing to look like a fool. I am willing to, like, try something out, and I
Yeah,
think oftentimes what stops people from doing that, or maybe stepping into their full potential, I
mhm,
I do believe is fear. You know,
yep,
I I I think fear, and then I think also misunderstanding of our calling. Like,
mm,
for me, my calling has not shifted as an artist working in the corporate world,
mhm,
in ministry, as a
mhm,
manager. Like, my calling hasn't changed. I think a
mhm,
lot of people, they're so afraid, like, well, is this what I'm supposed to do? God, I don't know if this is what I'm supposed to do. To me, it's like, I've never had that problem because my calling has been consistent.
yeah,
Scripture says, seek and save the lost. Like, I love Ephesians 2, when it talks about how the Lord we are his workmanship,
yep,
created for good works that he has, made before us, right? So
yep,
to me, I'm like, I'll go and check out conferences. I'll go and do ministry. I'll go and do graphics because it doesn't separate my calling. My
right.
calling informs everything I do.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true, and it's we don't have the long range view that God does, right? We don't we I'm because how long ago was that you started with Robert?
5 years ago.
Yeah, see, and even 5 years ago, social media wasn't what it is today. So, like, the things you were learning, the things you were doing, you didn't learn them and do them because you knew they would be helpful for your clients
Right. I didn't know.
running their social media campaign. Like, you didn't do it, you just were doing it because it was a need at the time and you were learning the
Yeah.
skill. Yeah. I had a similar situation. I worked for, so there were times when especially in the very beginning where I wasn't able to do casting full time. So I worked full time with a um, production company that did mostly audio. So they did the audio way back when like radio ministries were
Wow.
the most prevalent thing. And so it was Dr. David Jeremiah and
Wow.
Tony Evans and even Greg Laurie. They did the radio ministries they did all of the technical side of the radio ministries for those. And so one of my jobs was I had to package all of the actual cassettes. Some of them were reel to reel. So that tells you how long ago that was.
What's a cassette?
Um, Shut up. Shut up. That was bad. Um, but I would have to package them all, and there were hundreds of them, but also then listen. I was basically quality control, to
Wow.
listen to these broadcasts and make sure that the finished tape didn't have any glitches or something. And so, again, at that point, I didn't know I'd have a career for 30 years. I didn't know. I was just doing what I needed to do in that job. But in that job, I learned editing. I learned audio editing. I learned a little bit of video editing and sort of the principles of that, which have served me so much over time in my casting.
Wow.
Before we had the digital self tapes, I would have to take tapes and load them into an editing system and edit them together to give to the directors. Like you never know how those things are going
Yes.
to end up being helpful. You kind of wonder, at that time it's like I didn't know what I didn't know, but you just kind of go faithfully with the things that are opportunities are put in front of you and learn the things that you can learn. You just never know when they're going to end up being incredibly useful,
The Lord
and
is so wise about that. Like,
yes,
Jesus talks about he doesn't tell us, hey guys, when you guys first get started, I want you to be faithful with a whole bunch. Like
yes,
he says, be faithful with the little, and
hmm,
then in time you'll be faithful with much.
right,
Like one of these scriptures that stick out to me, like what you were just talking about, what you didn't know what you were doing then, how it would work out in the future,
right,
but you were honoring God with what you did know, right?
yep,
And then the scripture that talks about the word is a lamp to my feet.
mm,
When you think about that literally, right?
yep,
The word is a lamp to your feet. When you're walking, that light, that lamp is only enough for your next step.
mm,
So he's asking us, I want you to trust me enough just with the next step. We want
yes,
the spotlight on the stairway, you know what I mean? But God is like,
right,
I'm giving you a lamp, you know?
yes, yes, yeah, just that is such a beautiful like visual picture. um And so true because it goes back to what you were saying, like being faithful with the little, like be faithful with learning these skill sets that at the time your bosses are asking you to do. Just be faithful, just do the work, be faithful, be good at it, or, give it your best. And don't worry about the rest, right? Just be a good worker, earn your keep, um, not knowing that then that would be turned into something that really later in the years ended up kind of setting me apart from some others because I I am kind of in some respects technically more savvy, or I was
Yeah,
at the time. Now technology has just exploded in so many ways that I feel like a little baby again. But,
yeah.
you just never know when that gives you that little edge of like handing a fully edited, um, I'm going to say another word that you might not remember, DVD, um, to, to a director to look at actor choices, and
Yeah,
it's a burned DVD with labels and everything goes together. It's like, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that.
yeah.
So it's yeah, it is a part of being faithful with what he puts before us, and
Yeah.
then trusting that there's a purpose in all of it. And sometimes, you know what? Sometimes the purpose can be just provision, right?
Yeah.
God's provision for us and a way to pay the bills. And that's, we're fortunate if we get to do that within our industry somewhat, because it was clear I was never going to be like an audio engineer. That wasn't going to be my world, nor even a video engineer, but I was working in media. I was working
Yeah.
in the world of it. I learned a ton.
Mm.
Um, that did end up helping me. So while you could say, "Oh, I wanna be doing something else," just don't throw away what you're currently doing or the opportunities you currently have. And it's kind of like what Ken was saying, which is, he's getting cast. He's just getting cast in a specific niche, and
Yeah.
his creative desires are to grow beyond that, right? So it's like it sounds like, Ken, like you're serving well with the opportunities you're being given. You're doing a good job. You're appreciative and grateful for the work, but that doesn't mean that you can't continue to explore and push yourself in other ways while still being faithful with the provision that God's giving you right in front of you.
Without a
Um,
doubt.
let's see. We have some comments. Um, yeah, lots of people agreeing with you as far as supporting Christian film, and it's such a blessing for you to make sure God is first and to always allow him to lead your steps. That's from Kim. Venus, yes, Diego, curiosity all the way. Curiosity is a wonderful quality. um I think sometimes the challenge is the well, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes the challenge is between curiosity and contentment,
Mm.
because I don't want to be so curious all the time that it grows a discontent with where I am,
Mm.
curious about other things and other opportunities and other avenues, that somehow it creates a discontentment with where I am right here and now. But um I agree, curiosity is a wonderful thing for a lot of different reasons. Um Let's see. Cassandra, wow, Diego, you've come far in a short time. You have 5 years.
Yeah.
That probably feels like a long time to you, but that's actually pretty quick for sure.
Yeah, it was super quick, and then to even add on to that, for people not to believe the hype of like social media or like premieres and stuff. I had somebody ask me one time, like, "Oh, you get to connect with so many people that are established in the industry. How do you stay level-headed? How do you stay humble within this?" You know what keeps me humble, Bev? Like, number one is uh, being disciplined about being a
Mm,
part of a local church. And when, especially like we moved to Nashville and we're part of this local church. And what's amazing is a lot of people don't know like
mm,
who I am. You know what I mean? They
mhm.
just care about Diego,
Yeah,
who Diego is. So that keeps me humble. But then the other thing that keeps me humble is that what people don't see online is the actual day-to-day life.
mhm,
For me, total transparency, I went full time as a manager. I went full time only the past 10 months. I've been
mm,
full time in this. What people don't see is that I was I was so believing in this is what the Lord had directed me to that I worked a day job to pay my immediate bills as my responsibility as a husband and as a man.
mm.
That's a responsibility I have before management. So I had a job so that because sometimes what we do is we're like, oh no, I want to honor God, so I'm gonna go all the way in, not get a job, forget everything. To me, the
Yeah,
number one priority, apart from our relationship with the Lord, is our
yeah,
family. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And I'm not gonna
Mhm.
sacrifice my family for a somewhat of a dream, right? So I had my job and what I was doing, I was working at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. I was working in the marketing department. At times, I was working downstairs where whenever we get books and shipments, and I was helping
Yeah.
coordinate these bookings. So, people, how do I stay humble? Well, when they see me dressed up for like a premiere, y'all didn't see me when I was sweating, wrapping up boxes and putting things away. Like that's what I was doing today. And then at times when I didn't want anything to take place of my for my family to be burdened, I would then, because I'm always just creative with it. I found out about this Amazon Flex thing. I'm like, oh, I can make a couple of $100 in a couple of hours by doing this Amazon Flex thing. I did that whenever I wanted to go to a conference, whenever I wanted to buy something for a premiere. I would go and deliver some Amazon stuff, odd hours, so that it didn't affect my day to day
Mm.
finances, and so that I had the money to go out there. So that's what keeps me level headed. And that's why I get so passionate and adamant when people are like, oh, I believe the Lord has called me to this. I really believe the Lord has called me. I don't want to do anything else but do this. I'm like, if you believe the Lord has called you to this, then no one else should be sacrificing as hard as you should. You know, because
Mhm.
I believed in the Lord
Mhm.
called me to be a manager. And that's why
Mhm.
I sacrifice all those hours in my schedule.
Yeah, yeah, and, you know, God's promise is provision, but not necessarily provision in the way that we
Yeah.
maybe always want it or that we expected it.
Yes.
So absolutely doing doing what you need to do to honor the other things that the Lord has told us
Yeah.
our priority, which is God, family, and your wife, your family, your just honoring the fact that we have opportunities and we're going to just work really hard. It does make you appreciate them. It really does.
Yeah.
In the early years of my casting, um, and people may not know this, but I wasn't, as I just said, I wasn't a full-time casting director right out the bat.
Right.
I started as a $50 a week intern, and then
Right.
when they had another project, you jump in and you do what we can, but you got to pay the bills in between. And so I worked weddings for a while at a hotel, and
Yeah.
a funny story. There were a lot of ways I knew that that was not the ideal job for me. Um, so I had realized I'd gotten a project. I realized like it was time for me. That actually was my last job out of the industry. But the last wedding I did, so I was a coordinator for the day of event for the hotel. So just making sure everything goes smoothly, and all the pictures get taken and the people are in the right places. So it came to cake cutting time, and the servers bring out the cake and it's on the table. It's all beautiful. And the husband and wife, bride and groom, cut the cake, do all that. Great pictures. And then for whatever reason, it was that hotel's policy to then carry the cake back behind, in the hallways or in
Yeah.
the prep rooms, and then cut it and serve it. Well, this particular cake had used, I guess they'd used like a whipped cream frosting. Bottom line is they started to carry this, I think, 4-tier cake off of the pedestal, and it literally just fell and
No.
crashed to the ground in front of everyone.
Oh
As
no.
I'm standing there, I'm trying to I think I tried to catch, like, the top tier of it, in my hand, so my hands are covered with.
Oh
Yeah,
my
so that
god. You're like,
that
this is
was
not for
my
me.
big send off, that
Yeah.
the glamorous casting director has cake all over her hands as the cake was the probably $1,000 cake was just dropped to the
That's
ground.
amazing.
Yeah, so I was thankful for the provision of that job at the time, but I was ready to let it go. So, anyway, it's I that but, great memories, and it makes me appreciate when I was able to leave that job and be full-time. I'm grateful because it
Yes,
wasn't just handed to me. It didn't come easy. It was something I
exactly.
had to work my butt off for, and I really fought for, um, and I'm grateful. I don't take it for granted even to this day because I recognize it could all change, right? It could just all change.
That's the thing
So
though, like that the sometimes we view struggle with it being synonymous with something bad, and it could be uncomfortable, you know.
Right.
But discomfort isn't always bad. It I think it helps prepare the cushion for when you're actually out of that. You appreciate it so much more. I think I've shared with you the analogy between like the butterfly and the moth in terms of transformation. And
Mm.
oftentimes when we think about transformation or taking the next level, we think about a butterfly and it goes through the stages and it cracks open to the cocoon. But the moth is the one that's super impressive because the difference between the two, the moth, when it's in this cocoon, it has to fight its way to get out of it. And that's how many die when they're not able, when they're too weak. And
Mm.
sometimes when you see that struggle and you wanna go in there and just kind of cut it through for the moth, if
Yes.
you do that, the moth comes out and it's so weak, it won't be able to survive on its own. So, like, for us, I feel like struggle is like that moth journey where you're trying to fight through it, you're trying to fight through it, but then once you
Mhm.
get through, you've been able to build the skill to sustain yourself and
Yeah.
appreciate being out of that, you know?
Yeah, oh, I've not heard you tell that story before, actually. That's, um, again, that really makes sense. It's a good, uh, analogy for that idea that and if we're given something too soon, if that moth if it's opened up for them and made easy for them, they aren't ready for it. They aren't
Right.
ready for the environment, and they aren't ready to be out and free, yet. And
Right.
so, yeah, if we're given something too soon, if we're something is it's kind of a parent analogy. I'm not a parent, so I can't imagine what it's like, but it's gotta be hard for parents to not give their children just everything, make it easy for them, fix everything,
Mm,
solve every problem, but that's not
right.
what prepares them for real life, right?
Yeah.
You gotta let them learn it and fight it, and so, um, yeah, I mean, that's as humans, but even as actors, I think every experience that actors have is feeding the wealth of resources they have
Mm,
to recall, to understand, to have empathy with the characters or the situations, to portray roles in a way that is rich and honest and
yeah.
has depth because they have experienced some life. It's part of the reason why you can have a 15-year-old that looks 12,
Mhm.
but it's very hard to get a 15-year-old that feels 12
Mm,
because that 15-year-old has just lived more life, more things get exponentially more complex when
yeah,
you're 15 versus when you're 12, right? You're
yeah.
still usually in grade school, things are a little more simple, you're a little more protected. Um, Socially, things aren't quite as challenging. By 15, you're in the thick of it, and so to ask an actor to go back to the innocence, the naivete of a 12-year-old, is very, very difficult to do, um, and most of the time, it feels false. Quite
Mm,
honestly, it just feels false because you can't undo that life experience. You can't undo what you've lived, what you've experienced because it becomes a part of who you are. It becomes a part of
mm,
the fiber, the fabric, the tapestry of who you are. And but as an actor, every piece of that can be used can be used for good, can be used
yeah.
for God's glory because you're allowed to put it into performances that
Mm,
impact people and make a difference. Okay, let's see. I'm so Richard says, from the beginning, all I wanted was what God had for me and where he wanted me to go with his gift. I can remember going to acting class, wondering if being an actor was where I was heading, or was he going to use the class to enable me to stand up and talk to people? Either way, it didn't matter, and he did both. Yeah, that's awesome. And that's very true. Kind of taking the class to learn the skills,
mm,
not because you've already decided how those skills are gonna be used, but because you're saying, "Hey, I'll learn them and
Yeah.
I'll go wherever that leads me." Hi, Adam. Good to see you. Don, a lot of people in the industry have worked at weddings. I think catering, and it's because it's like weekend and night work usually.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because while I was doing weddings, I was still casting. So, let's see. Yes, building your toolbox of life. So true, Jan. So, Diego, so I know the relational part of what you do, the relational part of how you um create or build your clientele, build the people that you work with. Let's talk about what, just from a performance standpoint, when you see an actor, what really stands out to you as someone who catches your attention, who you are intrigued by? What are those qualities that seem to really kind of jump out at you?
Yeah, man, there's a lot, in a nutshell, first, if anyone wants to know who I want to sign, who I'm gonna sign next, look at who I've already signed as a
Mm,
number one indication. Like, people ask me what I look for. It's look who I've signed and who have been here for years. That they are my standard and what I'm looking for. But I think like things that stand out to me, um, apart from some of the immediate things that we already agree on when we talk about alignment, like number one,
yeah.
I feel the Lord has called me to steward within the faith-based
Mm,
community. So
mhm.
clients that I'm going to sign are going to be 100%, sold out for the Lord. They're
Yep.
going to be following after Christ. So for me, that's where I feel like the Lord has called me to.
Mhm.
So that's a no-brainer for me. And then what I look for now at this point in my career as a manager, I'm looking for people that are not looking for someone to define who they are. I'm looking for
Mm,
people who have already done the due diligence, who have gone through a bit of struggle in terms
mm,
of true refinement. They're
mm.
always going to be refined, but I'm looking
Yep,
for people when I'm speaking to them and they want to talk to me, that there is already clarity in who they are. That they're not
yep.
looking for someone to be like, yeah, well, tell me who I am. I need a manager right now to tell me what I need to do as an actor, or what I need to do as a creative. So that to me is an immediate thing where I'm not interested in that, because I'm not here to define that for you. Because the challenge with that is I may tell you something that's really, really good and impressive, and you maybe can deliver some of that, but that's not sustainable because you're
Right.
only going to be performing for me. I
Yep,
want you to already define that for yourself. You've had these conversations with God. You've had those moments, you had those, and you know who you are, you know what you've been called for. So
yes.
that to me is an immediate thing. I want someone that already knows who they are, where they want to go. And then the second thing I'm looking for is I'm also looking for someone that has, in terms of defining who they are, then they've also done the second part, which has been develop themselves,
Mm,
that they have already had development. There's already some type of brand to you. You're not going to get to the second part of developing something if you don't know who you are. You don't
mhm.
know who you are into this in this industry. So I'm looking for those two things, like who
Yeah,
you are. Being identity driven is a big thing for me. Is you know who you are, you know your identity. Number
yeah,
two, you've been working faithful with the little you have. You've been working diligently, disciplined, and
mhm.
trying to continue and be consistent with who you believe God has called you to be. Uh,
Yeah,
those would be like some of the initial things that stand out to me. And then the third
yeah,
thing I think would also be someone that has clarity. And this is tough within our faith-based community. You and I have talked about this, Bev, but someone that has a maturity and clarity and understanding the difference between ministry and industry. Uh,
mm,
in our world, sometimes we throw out ministry left and right. Everyone's got a ministry. This is my ministry. And if that's what you feel like you want to do, cool, go ahead and do that. what I've seen is I've seen a lot of miscommunication. I think I've seen a lot of maybe some manipulation with scripture, um, that their approach into this industry is just from a ministry component.
Mhm.
I think that there is danger within that for themselves, and then to bring
Mhm.
I'm not going to be along with that confusion. To be
Yeah.
clear, I am not a ministry manager, and the Anthem Collective is not a ministry, it's a business. The
Yes.
difference is, as a kingdom ambassador, we have the opportunity and the flexibility to minister within this company. But
Yes.
it is a business, and it being
Yeah.
a business, we also want to be sustainable
Mhm.
financially. We want to make money. We want to be able to make money effectively. But where the kingdom approach comes in is we want to make money in integrity and nothing that
Yes.
compromises our convictions.
Right.
So I
Right.
share that because I've had many people come up to me and tell me, "Diego, I want a manager. I just want to honor God. I don't care about the money," and that is not what I'm interested in.
And rightfully so, because again, God creates the opportunity. We talk about provision. I mean, we are due a wage for the work that we do, and if we are doing our part, then there is compensation for that, and we should not be ashamed of that, or discount that, meaning discount as in throw away that idea. And I think as actors, we absolutely need to know that, or I'm not an actor, sorry.
Mm.
Actors need to understand that too. You can go be an actor in ministry, create a drama team at your church,
Hundreds.
head the media team, be someone who's writing pieces for your church or for a community, or work with a youth group, or Big Brothers Big Sisters of America. You know what I mean? Like, that's great. Use those skill sets that way, and that is important.
Yes. Yeah.
And that has value, and that may be exactly what God is calling you to. But
Yes,
that
here's
is
the beauty
different.
with that, with what you're saying on that's such a good point. You said you can do like let's say the acting example, you said like you can do that at your local church, right? And here's why I think like why I say people need this clarity is because I'm not just coming up with these are messages that I receive where people are like, Diego, I want God has called me to make movies for the He called me to be an actor. I just want to honor God.
Right.
I believe God is calling me to be on The Chosen. I want to be on The Chosen. Here's there is a contradiction, I believe, within that. There's a sense of like using some Christianese, some Christian terminology to justify our desire. God
Mm.
has called me and wants to use me as an actor. Therefore, I should be on the number one Christian TV show. And to me, I'm like, if God has called you to something, again, with the faithful with the little, then it doesn't matter the platform. If God has called you to be an actor, then you should really be blessing the local community, your local church, and not think my first step where God is calling me to should be in the number one movie, the number one TV show. I think there's a contradiction there.
Mhm.
We don't need to be in a platform, the biggest platform, to justify your set of calling because your calling would be sustainable with or without a major platform. That's what God has called you to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. If that truly is his call. And to that end, it doesn't mean you don't have goals.
That's
Like,
all.
you can have a goal to be on The Chosen, and you can do the work and take the
Man,
steps, and do what's within your own control
yeah.
to try to bring that opportunity forward. So but there's a difference between a goal that you have, and maybe it's a goal that God has put on your heart, but that's not an entitlement. Uh,
Yeah.
God has
Yes.
called me to be an actor. I want to be on The Chosen, therefore God has ordained me to be on The Chosen. Like, that isn't a natural progression of it. But
Right.
you can do the work, right? You can do the work. You can set the goal. You can um, do with any project, who creates it, who's a part of it, who's on the casting team, who's what are the kinds of people they're looking for.
That
You can
requires
do all that work.
that requires you see the confusion between ministry and industry. We
Right.
confuse it to God has called me to this. So I want to what they're basically saying, this is where people don't mean it in this way, but the selfishness in that. God has called me to be an actor. I want to be on The Chosen. So what you're saying is you want to bypass the systems that exist because you feel
Mhm.
God has called you to that. And you think that's God honoring. That's there's a mix of that, scripture that reminds me of this, in the book of Joshua, um, God had told them, hey, there is a promised land I have
Mm.
for you.
Mhm.
There is a promised land that I want you to claim. But to get there, when you look into the book of Joshua, it's one of the bloodiest books. There's a whole bunch of battles, right? So God is telling Joshua, you will have this promised land, but to get this blessing that I have for you, it's going to require you to go to battle. It's going to require you to go to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Imagine the approach if somebody would have had like kind of like now, hey God, I feel called to be a soldier, or I feel called to steward this land, but I want to bypass the battle and I just want to land there. That's not the way
Right.
it works.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's so true. And um feeling a calling on your life, yeah, isn't a shortcut to
Right.
the work, to the training, to the consistency, to the discipline. It is almost, I feel like we should almost be better at those things and more willing to do those things. And I'm talking to myself right now, um, because God has put it on our heart.
Wait,
And
say that again. That was good. You said what about being willing? Say it again.
uh, now I don't know what I
Dang,
said,
you
but
said something like
basically I was saying we should be willing to, oh, that's my dog. We should be willing to make the sacrifice, to put into the work, to
yes.
do the most
Yeah,
because God has put it on our heart.
exactly.
Not say, God put it on my heart, therefore
Just give it to me.
it's just gonna happen, right? And I sit back and I wait for it to happen. Um,
That's good,
we
man.
should be doing more work,
Yes.
and giving him our absolute best, and
If you
does
believe in it.
he
If
yeah,
God
and does
has called
he
you to it,
shortcut sometimes? He does shortcut sometimes. Does he open doors way ahead of when we thought they would open? Sure, but
yeah.
that's God's, it's his prerogative. He's the creator. That's God's plan. That's God's work.
It's beautiful. There is a partnership. Like the beauty of it is God is saying, "No, I want to partner with you. Like
Mm,
I can just take you there, but I want to
yeah.
partner with you. And through your baby steps of faith, God will be honored." In the New Testament, when Jesus is healing people, when he's healing people, in each of his healing miracles, he always asks the individual to do something.
Mm,
A partnership, right? When the guy
yeah.
that's lame and can't walk, what does Jesus tell him? Is like, hey, pick up your mat, get up and walk. Or when the person that had
The
uh,
withered hand.
yeah, and what does he say? Stretch out your hand. Or
Mhm.
the blind man says he grabbed the dirt, the spit, put it in his eyes, and there was like this partnership that exists, and it's a beautiful thing that
Yeah.
we try to bypass the miracle in the struggle because we don't think that is God honoring. God is saying, I want you to go through the struggle because in that struggle of you going to where this blessing that I have for you, I'm going to be glorified. You know,
Yeah. And each of those things, given their current circumstances, didn't make sense that he was asking him to do. The lame man to get up and walk. It'd be like, well, I'm lame,
yeah,
duh, you know? But that's that element of trust. Are you gonna trust me
yeah,
even when it doesn't necessarily make sense to you? Are you just gonna trust me? And I think that
Yeah.
is the creative journey a lot of ways for people who are believers and who are rooted in Christ and who want to their work and their creativity to
Yeah.
honor God. Sometimes it may take a turn you didn't expect. And, both you and I have that in our
Yeah.
story of like, we didn't set out to
Yeah.
be where God eventually led us. But now looking back, it all makes sense, right? It
And it's
all
beautiful.
pieces together. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful tapestry. But some of the threads were a little bizarre in
Yeah.
my life,
Yeah.
even the whole wedding thing and if the only reason for that season was A, provision because, I needed income, and B, a sense of gratefulness for when I was able to get to do what I wanted to do, like, then it
Yeah.
was worth it. Then it was worth it. I don't know if that bride and groom in particular thought it was worth it as their cake lay on the ground, but, thankfully, they were really cool people, so,
Yeah.
it worked out
Yeah.
okay, though. Um,
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think that's great. Your
yeah.
story is great too, and it's like you're where you're at now, like, you're able to now look back at that moment that was probably super uncomfortable, and you
Oh,
didn't wanna be there, but now where you're at right now that's, like, part of your testimony journey of
yeah.
where you're at now. You're like, "Well, God was with me when the cake dropped, and God is with me now,
Yes.
as full-time casting director," you know?
And, the thought just now came to me that I haven't talked a lot about those times in my career, um, because I'm realizing that I had a tendency to associate those with shame, meaning admitting that I wasn't able to make my full-time living as a casting director, so I had to go get other jobs.
Mm,
And what a lie that is,
yeah,
right? What an absolute lie to feel shame over working jobs that paid the bills, that helped me
right.
to stay in the game long enough so that God could fulfill and put me on the path that, led to the long career. For any of you guys as actors, as creatives, don't look at those things of, oh, and I don't know if you have too, Diego, had people say, "Oh, well, I have to work a day job now," or, "Well, I wait tables," as if it's a bad thing that you're having to do that. No, embrace it. Embrace it, get all you can out of it, whether that means just financial stability, whether that means health insurance, anything.
Without a doubt.
Um, embrace it because when you're as old as I am now, I feel old and decrepit. I don't feel that way actually, but I sound that way is the way I'm talking. But you do look back and realize it was all for the bigger purpose. It
It
was
had
all
a
for the
purpose,
greater good.
but we do that to ourselves, in comparison, but, like, imagine Joseph wanting to remove the story when he was in the pit and just focus on the
Mm,
palace. Like, the journey of him being on the palace isn't as sweet without the pit, you know what
right.
I mean?
Oh,
Imagine
yes.
Paul being embarrassed that he had to pitch a tent in order to do ministry,
Yes.
like, there even our heroes in the faith had to do certain day jobs, and there's no shame in that, and
Yeah.
for me, my biggest embarrassment in a time, one of my biggest, like, I was super embarrassed was one of my first Christian conference that I went to after this conversation with Robert, and I went to go to a film festival. I went to Orlando ICFF, and Bev, I'm sure you were there killing it like always, and you were Bevin and all that. I just remember being there, my first time there and not knowing anyone, and it was the most uncomfortable experience for me. It was uncomfortable, it was embarrassing, just walking around there, not knowing anything about the industry, who's a producer, what's a director, what's a casting director, you know what I mean? I didn't know that, and I was so embarrassed as I'm walking by not knowing everybody. I
Mhm.
went into the most comfortable place there. I walked into the bathroom. and I'm just chilling by the sink, washing my hands like 10 times. I'm like, I don't know if I want to go back out there. And I remember being so like uncomfortable. I called Jazz. I called my wife and I told her, I'm like, damn, this is so uncomfortable. Like I don't know anyone. I remember my wife telling me, do you want to just come home? Like, you want to just come? And I'm like, yeah, I want to be home. Like I want to
Mhm.
get out of here,
Yep.
but I feel like I'm supposed to be here, even in the
Mhm.
discomfort. I feel like I'm
Yes.
supposed to be
Yes.
here, and I don't feel like I've given it the full try, like the full
Mhm.
experience. Like
Mhm.
I just felt like there was something there that I needed to be there. And I could have walked away, but I washed my hand maybe for the 10th time. And then I exited that bathroom. And my mentality was as I'm walking, still not knowing anyone, like one day I'm gonna be here and I'm gonna know people. There was a backdrop at the conference. Again, I had nobody to take a picture with me, so I asked some stranger, "Hey, can you take a picture of me?" And I knew I needed to kind of make an altar or make I
Mhm.
needed to document this moment. I needed to document my discomfort. I took a picture of that, and 2 years later, we went back to the same conference, and all my clients were speakers there. And
Yeah.
if it wasn't for that discomfort, that
What
coming back, it wouldn't have been as sweet.
No, 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 no. Well, and you might not have ended up following through 'cause it would have been really easy to go back to Robert and say, "Robert, I tried it. It was painful, dude, I'm not doing that again," and just
Yeah.
call it a day, but, yeah, I'm so glad that you worked through that discomfort because you sensed there was a bigger calling, and we talk about you and I both have a lot of people who approach us and say, I just feel really called to be an actor. I want to work in Christian film. And a lot of I've had several coaching appointments where it's like, how do I break into Christian film? And
Yeah.
it's not any easier than any other kind of film, at any other area of the film business. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be doing some things that are uncomfortable. It's going to be uh, making connections and just learning and putting in the time
And
and
failing, and
and
failing.
failing. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
going to fail. It's part of this journey. Here's the difference where failure becomes a bad thing, and that's why I try to tell people often when we talk about failure, you got to be identity driven. If you're identity driven, you can go through those moments of failure. But failure is a moment. Failure is
Mm.
an event. It's not your identity.
Yeah.
So you can freely fail. The Lord allows us to freely fail in order to get back up again because we're not
Yeah.
defined by it.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. And yeah, and it yeah, failure isn't the end. It isn't the end. You hear a lot of actors talk about in fact, I think it was I don't know. It might have been Denzel Washington or someone. I actually don't remember, but someone basically say, "I didn't learn anything in the things I succeeded at. I learned a
Mm,
lot in the things I failed at.
yeah.
I learned way more in the things I failed at than the things I succeeded at." So,
Yeah.
yeah, if we could all just sort of switch that mindset for ourselves, that we'd all be better off for
Yeah.
sure. Carolyn she said, "That's how I felt at Focus Conference last year, so out of my comfort zone, feeling so out of place." I've been that way, and I've felt that way too. I love I love those people who I think of like Venus and, like Laura May. There's certain people who will talk to anyone and who,
Yeah.
try to bring and kind of see those people who might be struggling a little bit and bring them into the fold. My hope would be that we can all be that for each other. If you're at one of those conferences and there's someone who looking a little lost, to be able to help them just understand how they're feeling and to be able to help them sort of meet just a couple people. Let's see. Darla says, I feel that, Diego. I'm going to my first industry networking event this month and have no idea what to do when I get there. Be walking around by myself, not knowing what I'm doing. Ah, man. I've been to a couple of CSA, Casting Society America, events and struggled with that because, I work in a area of the film business that is especially at that time, this was probably 10 years ago, that isn't very well known with directors and producers that most of the casting directors don't know anything about. And so, there's the proverbial, so what have you worked on?
Yeah.
And oh, it's so hard. And it's not that I'm not really proud. It's just you say it and there's crickets. They don't know what to say because I don't have any clue what it is.
So you tell them
Again,
it's a movie,
10
and they're
years
like,
ago.
"Wait, has that released yet?"
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard. It's hard, but just you'll learn something. You'll learn something from it, Darla. So just persevere through it. I spent most of that event kind of in a corner watching people, observing, learning, trying to glean from conversations. And so you'll get something out of it. But don't be afraid to just go up and talk to people and
Yeah,
say hello. And you may be surprised, um, that they'll be more welcoming than you think. At least I that would be my guess is that they will be. And if they're not, that's okay too. That's on them.
yeah,
Um, but just you will feel so good about having done it, Darla, because you will have faced kind of a fear. You will have, followed through on something, um, that you could, like Diego said, you could just leave the bathroom and leave the event and fly home and be done with it. But you're not going to, Darla. You're going to persevere through it, and you're gonna have a good time and it'll be worth it. So,
yeah.
um, William, growth begins outside our comfort zone. Yes. Hi, Francine. Um, Thank you for being so realistic. I've been a substitute teacher for 20 years. Flexible, respectable job, of course. There's no work below us and we can still chase our dreams and do our art. Absolutely. I love that attitude. I fully agree. Um, yeah. So we uh Darla, would you message me? I'd love to learn about this. So see, that's the other thing I love about our Let's Talk Tuesday community is they interact with each other and give each other feedback. And um, I love that you guys connect with each other. That's what we wanted to build with our little family here. So,
Yes.
okay, well, we've now been talking for an hour and 23 minutes.
That's crazy. That went by
I
quick.
know, especially because I told you when I got on with Diego a few minutes before, I'm like, I don't really know what we'll talk about. Here we are almost an hour and a half later. But it's great to again just be real with each other and to be honest about the wonderful parts. We talk about premieres and we talk about new projects coming out and casting this and all these wonderful things that sound so great, but there is a lot of work and a lot of life and a lot of two steps forward, one step back,
Yeah,
that we all should be honest about and embrace, and just know that God is still at work. It may feel like it it's not going the way you want to, but God is still at work and God is still God. And he
yeah,
still has a plan for you. He still loves you. He wants the best for you. It just may be a different color thread than you thought it would be in your tapestry. So,
yeah.
um okay, well, I say we sign off till next week. And as Diego said, there are some spots open here or there in the coaching schedule. So if you are interested in that, then just go and look up those different opportunities. And I would love to spend some time with you that way. But until then, we will see you next Tuesday. Yeah, next Tuesday's the 10th. So we'll see you next Tuesday and we'll have something. Oh, the Creative Exchange. See, I forgot to talk about it. I'm so bad. Okay, creative exchange. I've already been really excited about it, but I'm really, really excited about it. I was explaining to a couple people kind of what makes the creative exchange unique, and I think it really is the personal connection and the focus. It's just about actors. It's not filmmakers. We're not trying to have a track for screenwriters and a track for filmmakers and a track for directors, track for producer. It's just about the actors. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about all aspects of that experience being an actor. Um, and and so that I would say is the biggest difference, is that it's for the actors. It's focused on the actors. And but we will have different guests that are focused on different aspects of the process, but with a point of view towards the actor, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's perfect. And Bev ain't gonna hype herself up, but y'all get to see Bev here on Tuesday night. But there is nothing like experiencing Bev in person. And so Beverly's gonna be one of the speakers for the Creative Exchange. It's happening September 18th, 19th, and 20th
Yep.
in Nashville, Tennessee, specifically the Franklin area. And yeah, we're excited about that. We'll be posting about it. But yeah, go to creativeexchangeconference.com to get more information as far as the tickets, the different speakers. But I think it's going to be great. And for those people that are scared about going somewhere not knowing anybody, well, you know two people. So now you
Yeah.
know Beverly
There
and
you
Julie.
go. There you
So,
go. And anytime I'm at an event, and creative exchange will be exactly this. When someone says, "I'm part of the Let's Talk Tuesday family," we're literally, there's an instant connection. Like,
that's
we're
right.
already fast friends. So, yay, Jenny. Yay, I'm so excited. That'll be awesome. So, yeah, always make sure you say, "Hey, I'm part of your part of the Let's Talk Tuesday
That's
family."
right.
And you we already have a connection. We already have that commonality. So that's exciting. I'm really, really looking forward to that. Looking forward to spending time with you guys, and really being able to focus on the things that are applicable to you and your pursuits, not just spiritually, but business wise and creatively as well. Um, so I think we're done for tonight, sir.
That's it. That was great. Good job at really not knowing what to talk about tonight. We like an hour and 30
Well,
minutes. Well played.
that's you. I'll talk to you as long as, as long as the opportunity will allow, because
Well, I'll
you
let you say bye to your people the way you do. I'll just say it was great to be on this side of the camera now. So I
that's
love
awesome.
y'all. I'll see y'all soon, hopefully at the Creative Exchange or another Let's Talk Tuesday.
Oh, I love that man and his wife, and what a blessing he is to all of us, right? He's just the real deal. So, Caitlin, I'm excited that you're going. I'm excited that you're going. That's great. Um, Adam, love you, love all you guys. I really, honestly, um Jenny says, went to ICFF, did not seem to be for actors so much. Yeah, each is a little different. So that's why I say, when people say what's different about Creative Exchange, is that it is for actors, and it's a little more of a deep dive for actors, and some practical hands-on kinds of speaking and teaching and work together. So, and you'll make friends pretty quickly, because the environment is such that that's what we want. That's what we want to foster. So, um, love you guys. Thank you for joining us this week, and for letting us chat. And I'll see you next Tuesday, June 10th. I can't believe we're almost getting to the middle of June. It's crazy. In the meantime, I hope you guys have a beautiful week. And yeah, you're just awesome people, and just take one step. Let that lamp of God's word illuminate the step in front of you, and take that one step at a time. And I'm excited to see where that leads. So, love you guys. Have a great week. Bye.